So I touched on this in the vlog last week, where I discussed um, a little bit about not wanting to fight and not being a person who likes fighting. I don't mean physical fighting, but like verbal confrontations, and how I was just talking about how I feel like I get perceived as someone who's confrontational a lot um, in like personal relationships, and maybe more than that, maybe like other scenarios too. But I feel as though that's a misunderstanding of where I'm coming from. I feel like I don't like to initiate conflict. That's not how I perceive what I'm doing a lot of the time. I think this has to go, like, this kind of goes with that justice part of me that is focused on what I feel is right or what I feel should happen, and it's really hard for me to let go of that. So there are times where you could say that I've got two choices. I can be quiet, or I could lie and agree with the person I don't agree with. I guess there's more than two choices. Um, there's a lot of choices. There's a myriad of choices. But the other thing I could do is speak up and say something if I don't think something is right, or if I feel like I need to clear up something that someone has perceived wrong or incorrectly, or they've interpreted something just differently than it is. Then I need to clear that up, or I could just say nothing at all. Saying nothing would be non-confrontational, right? Unless someone's asking you a question and then you're refusing to answer the question, I would say that would be confrontational. But me choosing to say, hey, I don't really think that's right, like that's not how that went, or I don't think we should be doing this, or this doesn't seem like a great idea, whatever it is, whatever that thing could be. That's not me initiating a fight. Like, that's me trying to correct something. And I feel that way a lot. And depending on, again, like with personal relationships, that happens more frequently because I'm not afraid to challenge those people, and I'm not afraid for them to challenge me. Um, Sometimes it's difficult for me to hear certain things and for me to take that information in and process it and sit with it and do what I need to do with it. I think that a lot of people have difficulty taking criticism, and there's also a different perception of like, I'm open to it doesn't necessarily mean that it's easy. It's difficult at times, but I'm open to doing the hard work. And sometimes I need to hear things more than once, and sometimes I need time to process, and sometimes I need assistance with certain things. But if I am notified of an issue, sometimes I don't realize it's an issue until someone tells me. And even when they tell me, it might take me some time to accept it and then to work on it. But there are times where I can't do anything unless I have that knowledge. And sometimes I figure out those things on my own. I don't need to wait for someone to tell me that. Let's say I'm an impatient person. Okay, I recognize that all by myself. I know that I have problems with patience. But anyway, the point is that like I need relationships where I'm allowed to challenge people and they're allowed to challenge me, and that neither of us are scared to do that. And it's really difficult to challenge certain people in certain situations because we don't have the intimacy that allows for us to feel safe in doing that. So, I mean, if it's coworkers or like an employee-employer relationship or something like that where you don't feel like you can challenge your boss or whatever, there's certain social situations which don't feel comfortable to do that in. But I find it really difficult to let go of stuff that I don't feel is right. And I might be wrong in those scenarios. I'm saying what I feel is right in that moment. It is hard for me to not speak up about it. And there's plenty of times that I am not confrontational. I'm very silent about it. But that comes out later. I rant to somebody about it, or I hold it in and I'm frustrated and you spew it out later, not on like an undeserving party. I just mean like I talk about it, or I'm holding that and it's not great and it feels tense and not good and stressful. I don't like that feeling, and I want to be able to talk to the people that it's relevant to. I want to be able to tell the person that needs to hear it, hey, this is what I have to say about this because I don't agree with you. And I don't think that means I like to fight. I like to have arguments. I like the drama. No, because ideally, someone can say, okay, I see what you're saying, and maybe there's a little bit of back and forth, or maybe they're like, I need to think on that. Like, okay, thank you for letting me know. There's me bringing something up or challenging someone doesn't automatically make it a fight. That person's response is part of that. It's a conversation. It's a two-way street. It's not like, oh, you know what you were saying and you know that would cause a fight. No, I didn't. I made a criticism or I challenged somebody because it felt like it needed to be done, or it felt like, yeah, this thing is happening all the wrong way and it's completely inefficient, and I could add my words to this conversation, and then you could be aware of that inefficiency, and maybe we could move forward and correct this problem. But if your attitude is so defensive and aggressive or whatever that you won't be open to the admission that you could be doing something incorrectly or wrong, or that it could be better, then I guess we're going to exchange some words, and I don't know where it's going to go exactly because I don't know how you're going to respond. And one of my problems is that I don't have a lot of self-control with my responses either. That I can get heated in one of those conversations very easily, and it's something that I need to work on. But also, it comes back to this thing of justice and karma and all that, which I've talked about before, of like, I don't believe that karma is going to clean things up for me. I don't feel secure in letting karma do the work, or the universe balancing itself out. I don't feel good about that. I don't believe in it. I don't have faith in it. So I want to be the one who corrects this issue. I want my voice heard. It's really difficult for me to not have that. And there are a lot of times where I think that I would have a more peaceful life and be more stress-free if I could let those things go. And if I could just be like, hey, that person's going to think what they're going to want to think, and that's just the way it's going to be. But I don't give them an opportunity to change if I don't tell them there's a problem. So I get really stuck. I get really, really stuck. And I mentioned in the vlog that sometimes that leads to the state of paralysis where I'm like, what do I do? It's not socially acceptable for me to say this thing, and also the silence is going to be difficult for me, and agreeing with it I can't do, and then like saying this thing, or like how do I go, and then I just get in circles about it, and I'm like, I don't know what to do, and I get stressed out. So I obviously it's that thing of like pick and choose your battles. What hill do you want to die in? All those tropes. That's not the word I wanted to use, but those cliches. I don't have a very strong sense of when to leave things alone, when not to, and when to engage and whatever. But that's also because it is so difficult for me to leave it alone, to not have my voice heard. And it sometimes, like how, again, I get trapped in this thing again, and so I don't want to keep repeating it, but if I don't say something, how do they know that I have an issue with it? I don't expect them to read minds. I expect people to communicate, which is what I'm trying to do. But if I say something, sometimes that's enough to just end up for things to be worse for me. By just like being like, by pointing something out to someone in a position of power who doesn't like to be challenged, then all of a sudden I've created a worse situation for me. And then it's like, hey, well, sometimes the situation is just stress. Is by having an argument or a disagreement with somebody, or just knowing you're not going to be able to open them up to other possibilities, and that they're just going to remain locked into their belief, even though it's really negative or harmful to others. And it's just like, hey, well, I just need to walk away from that. And it's really hard for me to do that. It's hard for me to walk away without someone being open to exploring the ideas that I've brought to them, because I didn't do it because it's not about me being right, it's about what I feel is right, but not about me being right, if that makes sense. So it's, again, it just goes back to this thing of like, I don't like to fight, I don't like confrontation, it stresses me out, I really don't like it. But it is more stressful for me at this point in life to not say something. And I need to get better at just not saying anything. But I need to figure out and balance and learn, when is it appropriate to not say something, and when do I need to say something? Because again, I can't expect people to read minds. I need to communicate. And I've always thought for so long, like, no, like, why is this person getting upset? Like, I am communicating, I am being expressive, I am telling them what I'm feeling, and what, like, now we can have a conversation about it, and that backfires so much. And I'm like, well, how are we supposed to change anything? What am I supposed to sit here until I build resentment from this thing that you don't even know you're doing that really upsets me? And then I'm just supposed to what do I do with all that negative feeling when we could just talk about it and maybe we could fix it? But anyway, there's this perception of just like, oh, that I enjoy fighting. I don't. I don't at all. It stresses me out. I don't like that type of confrontation. I think it's because I can verbally argue and I can stay in that for a long time. It's not a flight response. It's a fight response that I can have in those moments. And I don't cut my losses quick enough. And I don't freeze often. Freezing is probably a better thing to do in those moments, but it's more of a fight response rather than a flight response. And so I think people perceive that as I like it, and I don't like it. I just would rather say something than not say anything, because I haven't mastered even how to say things sometimes, and I need to pause way more often. I need to figure out how I can balance not just when to say things and when not to, but how to feel good about not saying things. How to feel good about just like, I don't need to challenge that person, I'm not going to whatever, change their mind. But again, how do you know that? How do you know that you're not giving them an opportunity to change their mind if you don't give them information sometimes, right? I don't know. It's just such a huge struggle for me on like a daily basis. And it's really frustrating.